Hello, it's Pastor Jeremy, and I am here in my kitchen just doing what we do in quarantine and working from home today. I was thinking one of the things I really enjoy doing is reading organizational biographies. I'm fascinated how companies get started and do what they do. I was looking back over Hatching Twitter, which is a great Twitter organizational biography by Nick Bilton, and I'd forgotten somehow that Twitter had started as audio, as a podcasting platform, and then made a huge pivot, like to something completely different. But when I was reflecting on that, I realized that, it's funny, we know these things in business world, right? That when something's not working, we pivot and we do something else. We find what is working and we kind of run down that path for a little ways. We understand that in business, but we don't always understand that in our spiritual life. Sometimes, somehow, these concepts that make complete sense in other parts of our life don't end up making it into our spiritual life. And the pivot is an essential part of a fulfilling spiritual life. There are things, spiritual practices that work for different people. There are authors that work for different people, and but they don't work for everybody, right? And they don't work forever. But for whatever reason, a lot of us grew up with thinking that we have to do this or that or the other, right? We've got to do this thing. This is what you do to engage spiritually. And if you don't do that, then you're failing, right? But what if that doesn't work for you? What if that doesn't give you this sense of spiritual awakening? What if it really doesn't help you commune with God? Well, if that was happening in a business, if we were developing a product that was just not working, was not finding an audience, the answer would be simple. Do the research and pivot. Find what is needed, what is working, where there is a market, and go there. It's the same way for our spiritual lives, and that's something I want to encourage you to do. I want you to reflect on the things that you are doing to feed your soul, and ask yourself, is that working? Or have I, or maybe you've stopped doing things. They've just fallen off the radar, and you've not been attentive to yourself spiritually because, well, the thing that you used to do that was great doesn't work for you anymore, or maybe it never really worked for you. When that's where you find yourself, it's time to pivot. It's time to try something new. Maybe the devotional author that was really powerful for you before the pandemic just does not ring true. Maybe it's just finding a different voice. Or maybe you really used to love poring over the Bible, but that is coming up dry. Maybe it's time to pivot to something like contemplative prayer, like Christian meditation practices, or maybe you used to be really great at centering yourself in that sort of mystical space of your soul and communing with God, but since the pandemic, it's felt like you were staring up at the ceiling instead of into heaven. Maybe you need to open up a sacred text and read it and study it, or maybe you need to find a person that you can have a dialogue with. I don't know. But in your spiritual life, don't be afraid to pivot, to to change from a spiritual podcasting company to a spiritual microblogging platform, right? To turn and go in a different direction, to find what's working for you. Because the thing is, God is around. God is speaking. Oftentimes we just have to find the tools that help us sense God and hear the voice of God and find the path of God in our life. So this week, pivot.